So before I introduce the Honorable Consul General, let me just tell you one thing, which is that a lot of people ask me, why did we do this center at Columbia, the Raj Center? And obviously it's Columbia, it's New York, it's SEPA, and so many things. But I would say the overarching reason for doing this was Dr. Arvind Panagaria. And Dr. Arvind Panagaria has been a luminary. He's taken the thoughts forward here about the Indian economy. And I think the day that he put together today, is an example of all the work that he has done. So, Arvind, thank you very much for a wonderful day. I just thought I'd say that up front, and then we can move on to the serious stuff. So, welcome, Randhir ji. Very nice to see you. Quick introduction for Randhir Jaiswal, the Consul General in New York. He's a career diplomat. He joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1998. So it's been about 25 years that he's been an IFS officer. He has served in Portugal, Cuba, South Africa, and also at the Permanent Mission of India in New York. In between, obviously, he's done many other things, but the last position he had before coming to New York was he was deputed to serve the President of India as Joint Secretary managing his international relations portfolio. And he's been here as a Consul General since July 19th of 2020, so close to 3 years. He has many interests. Some of you might know that he's passionate about cricket. So we can actually spend the next 45 minutes talking about cricket if you want, but I think there'll be many other things to talk about. He's very passionate about climate change, culture, and so many other things. And on a very personal note, I think he has brought just an incredible energy to the mission here, an incredible energy. He has had many, many events at the Consul General home, at the office. I think I've been to more events on Fifth Avenue and 64th Street in the last 3 years than any time in the past. So thanks for doing that. The events that he has had have been sort of very diverse, cultural events, commerce, education, and so many things. So thank you for all that. So we've had a very interesting day. Oh, before I say that, I'd also like to welcome Dr. Abha Jaiswal, and one of their 2 daughters is here with us. So welcome. We had a very interesting day today. We've talked about the economy, we've talked about poverty levels, we have talked about the importance of manufacturing, about foreign relations, and I think this is a very good time to invite the Consul General to come and talk about a little bit of a bigger picture and see where are we after 75 years of independence. As you know, this is Amrit Kaal. And then also to look at the next 25 years and see, what is in cards, for the next 25 years, and what are some of the pluses and minuses and the challenges India will face. So with that, Consul General, welcome.
Namaste and good evening, friends. First of all, my thank you to Dr. Panagaria for inviting the consulate to partner in this conference. It is our delight and our honor to convey a louder message of India, all that is happening in the country, to a wider audience, to our friends here in America. Thank you also to Mr. Deepak Raj, Chair, for this session, for his support and for his encouragement to the consulate and to the Indian American community. It means a lot to us, let me tell you. The topic that was given to me, Amrit Kaal, India in Amrit Kaal. Before I do that, this is the first time that I'm talking or speaking at this university, prestigious, distinguished university. So let me pay my humble tribute to one of the most distinguished alumnus of this university, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, whose birth anniversary we'll be celebrating yet again on 14th April at the consulate. He has been one of the connect, a leader whose idea, whose legacy through whom we have continued to nourish and nurture our connect with this great institution. Amrit Kaal is about all that we've done 75 years after our independence and all that we espouse to do in the next 25 years when India will achieve 100 years of its independence in 2047. But Amrit Kaal, Amrit means eternity. It's also about doing things in a manner that you change yourself for all times to come. That to me is central to the change that we are going to see in the next 25 years. Especially for a country which is a civilizational country, a civilizational state. It aspires to rediscover itself even as it moves on the economic trajectory in growth, to rediscover roots as per its thought, as per its history, so on and so forth. So that is what is so essential about Amrit Kaal, in addition to all the economic growth and development that we aspire to do in the next 25 years. What also excites me about Amrit Kaal is that perhaps for the first time, and our nation has been independent only for 75 years, but nonetheless, for the first time, we are thinking in terms of 25 years time horizon. So far, we had thought only in terms of 5 years. It's also because the society in India is becoming aspirational. People want to do more. People want to reach out. Small towns and villages, if you go and see in India, the energy levels are very different, so on and so forth. It's a society that wants to really push hard on many fronts. And all that is happening in the Indian startup ecosystem, in the innovation space, entrepreneurship space, is an example of that. What I'll do is that I'll talk about some of the building blocks that I see from various perspectives. Obviously, I'm not an economist, so I can't go into the details, micro details of some of the topics that have been talked about here. But how I see what are the building blocks of Amrit Kaal. I joined the Indian Civil Services in 1998. In the last 25 years, I've seen, in my journey, I've seen Indian economy grow 9 times. So from 400 billion thereabout in 1998 to 3.5 trillion in 2023 or 2022. In the next 25 years, on a similar trajectory, Indian economy is going to grow at 9 folds, at least plus minus. So therefore, you can calculate and do your math, where India will be in 2047. Already we are the fifth largest economy in the world, moving up the ladder soon to be the third. Along with the growth, already you see a transformational change in the country in terms of connectivity projects, rail, roads, ports. Today is World Tuberculosis Day. We had a Prime Minister speaking in Kashi, Banaras, to the world community, where we have yet again recommitted ourselves to eliminate tuberculosis from India 5 years in advance of the global target. The global target for elimination of tuberculosis 2030, that is the Sustainable Development Goal target. We have recommitted ourselves that we are going to do it by 2025. And we are deploying technology, we are doing many other things. I am a lover of sports. I'll give you an example of sports, the kind of transformation that is happening. In 1998, I used to watch all sorts of soccer, sports, hockey, cricket. Never in life did I think that Indian company will ever, in my lifetime, be one of the lead sponsors of the Soccer World Cup. But it did happen. One of the leading Indian edtech companies was the lead sponsor of the Soccer World Cup in Qatar. So that gives you an idea, the kind of changes that are happening. Many of the changes people miss out. 2013 or 14, we had launched that Mangalyaan interplanetary mission to Mars. We did it at $70 million, the cost of the project, less than a sci-fi movie in Hollywood. In 2017-18, we had a 6-member crew, all women crew from Indian Navy circumnavigating the globe in a sailboat. Yet another chapter, a landmark in our history and history of the world. So all these things put together tells you the kind of changes that are happening on the ground. You'll see more of these transformation changes happening in the Indian space in the next 25 years. So that's the economy and the connectivity, infrastructure, etc. Now let's look what's happening at the society level, at the social level. There's almost a silent revolution. People don't talk of it. Larger media groups don't highlight it because it's not all that attractive. I served with the President of India. Let me tell you, I used to go with him for convocations to various universities. Jipmer in Pondicherry, Agra University, or in Guwahati, everywhere this was the story. If there were 100 achievers, invariably 90 to 95 of them would be girls or women. So if that is the story of India today, you are looking at a different sociology of Indian women in the next 10, 20, 15 years. For the first time in our democracy in 2019 elections, we had more women voters participating in election than ever. The gap that was there in 1960s of 16% is now reduced, not only made zero, but 1% in favor, almost 1% in favor of women. Never did in my life did I ever imagine that the Prime Minister of India, in his Independence Day speech from Red Fort, will talk about menstrual health. Prime Minister Narendra Modi talked about menstrual health, sanitary napkins, so on and so forth. It shows the kind of mindset change that is happening among the leadership, among the wider population. These are some of the examples that today India has 8.1 million self-help groups, massive backbone of cooperative structure, bringing out huge transformation, value, economic opportunities, socio-economic benefits at the grassroots level. And the other example that I don't miss out in giving is not only people are doing things at the grassroots level, Indian women, but also in the air. The Indian civil aviation sector, of course, is booming and bursting. We have the highest percentage of women pilots in the world, 12.5%, twice as much as America. These are some of the things that people don't talk about, but it tells you the kind of impact the impact that is happening on ground. Cricket, Deepak ji, thank you for mentioning that. Indian Cricket Control Board is the only cricket control board in the world which has decided that it will give equal match fee to women as it gives to men. Rajasthan Royals, one of the franchisee of the Indian Premier League, its lead sponsor, the company called Nine, which makes sanitary pads. And all the players, of course, their logo here is 9 in front and 9 behind. It tells you the mindset that is changing in terms of how society in general looks at women issues and how women themselves are trying to advance in our country. Third issue that I would like to talk about is embrace of technology. During COVID, we saw there were vaccine naysayers in this country, in Europe, in many parts of the developed world, but hardly any in India. We were able to vaccinate 2.2 billion vaccine doses through a COVID platform with much ease, absolutely no social pressure or resistance. It tells you that the society is prepared to embrace technology, prepared to listen to science. Today you have, India's fintech platform, UPI, is making global news. 40% of all payments that happen real-time basis in the world is happening in India. It tells you a lot about how people in India, in rural areas, are embracing technology. You must have seen latest report in New York Times here about, if you go to any of the villages in India, try to buy fish and give him some cash, he or she is not going to accept cash because he wants digital payment. Drone technology is being utilized to map areas in rural areas and to hand over property rights. So that is the embrace of technology, and it's going to become even more pronounced as we go forward. The fourth aspect that I would like to highlight is climate change action. The government, of course, is in the lead. We are leading from the front, globally speaking. We had made a commitment of meeting 40% of our energy requirements from non-fossil fuel sources by 2030. This was in Paris. We met a commitment 9 years in advance in 2021. Therefore, in 2022, when we went for Glasgow, we revised a commitment to 50% of energy needs from non-fossil fuel sources. At the same time, we also set a target for ourselves of 500 gigawatts of energy to be produced from non-fossil fuel sources by 2030. If we actually do that, we'll be meeting 65% of energy needs from non-fossil fuels by 2030. National Hydrogen Mission, through which we want to produce 200 gigawatts of energy, all that will contribute towards how we look at climate change adaptation and meeting our Glasgow targets. Ethanol blending, similar story. We had a target date of 2022. We met 10% of ethanol blending 6 months in advance, and now we have revised our target for 20% ethanol blending. From 2030, it has been brought down to 2025. That is happening at the government level. Look at what's happening at the people's level. Many of you, you are connected to India. Jadev Payeng, this forest man in Majuli Island, the largest river island in the world in Brahmaputra, he has created a forest of the size of Central Park just on his own. Tulsi Gauda, this lady from the tribal in the tribal tracts in Karnataka, she has planted 30,000 trees. She's called the Encyclopedia Woman of the Forest. Save Soil movement, which is Sadhguru has launched, and I am a big champion of it. 75 governments, agriculture ministers have signed up for Save Soil movement. Save Soil movement is about fixing the topsoil of the world. All your problems in regard to health security, in regard to food security happens because we are contaminating the topsoil. The topsoil of this width takes millions of years to build. But you destroy, but you can easily destroy, and it's being destroyed within 5, 10, 20, 30 years because of all sorts of pollutions and all sorts of intervention. Look at the river rejuvenation programs that are happening in various parts of India. I just want to tell you, just to give you a sense that, while on one hand, the government is looking at growth, at the same time matching its environmental commitments, people and communities are not behind. They are equally pulling their weight in this direction. Climate change discourse and climate change adaptation, climate change conversation in India is far, far ahead than what I see in many other parts of the world. And the fifth issue that I would like to highlight is whenever there is wealth creation in a society, people become more confident of themselves. And when that happens, people own their space more, their roots, their tradition, their heritage, their language, so on and so forth. In the last year or so, at the consulate, we have tried to celebrate Indian diversity by celebrating different languages of India. Tomorrow we have a program on Kannada language. And let me tell you, we've had programs on Tamil, on Bengali, on Bangla, on Punjabi, Sindhi language. Immense encouragement and response from the Indian American community. There has to be a reason why Mallakhambh, which is a traditional sport of Maharashtra, is being celebrated and developed here in New Jersey. One gentleman, one IT engineer, he thought of bringing Mallakhambh here, and from his backyard now he's built this movement here. You have Mallakhambh being practiced in New Jersey, Mallakhambh being celebrated in Philadelphia, Los Angeles, so on and so forth. And not just Indian Americans, there are other people also. 2 days ago, we were celebrating Bihar Divas at the consulate. I got to hear poems and songs of Vidyapati, the great Mithila scholar of Sanskrit and Maithili. All this is happening because people want to own their space more. You'll get to see more of it happening in the next 25 years. Recently, a Prime Minister, along with WHO Director General, he inaugurated the WHO Global Center for Traditional Medicine in Jamnagar, Gujarat, where research on Ayurveda and other traditional systems of medicine of India and other parts of the world will be researched and developed. You'll see many more of these activities as we go forward. Sixth, I'll take you, I come from Bihar, the land of Buddha. In 6th century BC, there was immense amount of wealth was created. When you have so much of wealth and opportunity created, the society is in a flux. And therefore the society, through 62 heterodox sects, of which Jainism and Buddhism are just 2 of them. So my sense is that as a society we have been like that. Material advancement, you will also see a lot of spiritual advancement. It's bound to happen. We'll see a lot more focus on our family values. I would like to specifically stress here little on, the kind of teacher-student relationship that I have seen in India, based on respect. I haven't seen anywhere else. And I would like our friends who come from India here to bring that value, share that value, and see if people see any merit in it or not. Our own culture of valuing our teachers, respecting our parents is something that I think it has a lot of value. It has stood us in good stead for thousands of years, our family structure. I was talking the other day, 2 days ago, with Mr. Deepak Raj. I said when we celebrate India, 75 years of India, we give a lot of credit to our educationists, our scientists, our leaders, our founding fathers. Mr. Rajat Gupta, founder of ISB, what a school he has founded. Thank you, sir. You've done us proud. But we miss out on somewhere highlighting one thing. The contribution of the generation of my parents, people who were born in pre-independence era, the amount of sacrifice they made. We have here CEOs of the world from the Indian American community. People talk of their success. But ask each of them, they will tell you the kind of sacrifice their parents made. We have to, I think, pay a tribute to them. I've yet to read, sorry, Dr. Saab, the book that you've written for your father, but I'm sure the story is same as I see in my parents' generation. Immense amount. That was a generation in India that was making transition from a joint family system to a nuclear family system. They had the responsibility of their kids, but also of everybody in the village, of their uncle, aunt, etc. And there was no discrimination. They could not be, because that was the social control. And they did it as part of the responsibility, more importantly, as part of the duty. So I would say all these things, in a sense of rediscovery, you'll see there'll be material advancement, India will be a huge economy. It is going to make all that happens in India, startup ecosystem, look at it, it's booming and bursting. All that is going to have a huge impact on geopolitics of the world, on geoeconomics of the world, and of course for this relationship, it's only going to go India-US relationship in the days ahead. With that, I think I'll stop here and then take on some questions and make our conversation more lively. Thank you.
So in the interest of time, maybe I'll ask 1 or 2 questions and then open it up. I think there'll be a lot of interest in what Randhirji just said. And thank you very much for all the points that you made. Just to start out, can you just tell us 3 or 4 areas? I'm sorry, let me back up a little bit. There's a big discussion this morning about trade versus investment and the implication, for India. What are the 3 or 4 areas, or 2 or 3 areas, where you see the most opportunity in India for investment from the U.S.? What can you highlight that could be of interest to our audience here?
So I was talking to some of our stakeholders, and I said I'm going to Columbia University. What should I talk about? This gentleman in India, he was dealing with a 25-member delegation from Netherlands. They were all looking, they were 25, 30-year-old youngsters, looking for opportunity in the agri-tech sector in India. So he told me, you don't even realize how much of cross flow is happening in the knowledge space. We only look at in terms of the number of students who are coming from India to the United States, and last year there were 82,000, making us the largest international cohort for the first time. But from here to the United States, to India, immense amount of traffic, student, research, entrepreneurs, people looking for innovation, collaboration, so on and so forth. So that I think the knowledge part is where a lot of collaboration between India and the United States is going to happen, because that is where the real value is. Yesterday, a gentleman was telling me, you can sell commodity and earn money for 100 years, but if you sell an idea, you can make money into X over 1,000 years. So that is, I think, knowledge space between India and the United States is where the real value is, knowledge and technology. And the other area, now talking about specifically some of the areas, air mobility. There's a lot that is happening in air mobility here in this country. People are talking of eVTOL technology, vertical lift, and then the infrastructure to support it. Especially in India, because we have a large population, we have congested areas, we have to move hospital patients from in Dehradun from one area to the other. eVTOL technology or air mobility has all that answer. Talking to this fellow, this gentleman, this company, who said that he is looking at a business opportunity as to how to, I don't know how many of you travel to Bangalore, but it's little painful traveling from the airport into the city. He is looking for an opportunity as to how he can transport passengers from the airport to the city using eVTOL technology and make some business there. Air mobility, Indian civil aviation space is expanding very fast. You have to go and see people traveling. Who are the people traveling? Actually, villagers in India are traveling. A few years from now, I'm from Bihar, so the only international airport that serviced me, my hometown, was Patna Airport. Today, I have 4 airports around me within a range of 150, 200 kilometers, which services me. So, huge amount of opportunity in civil aviation, in air mobility. Some figure is air mobility, you have 250 or 500 helicopters in India right now. It's going to expand to 6,000, 7,000, 10,000 in the next couple of years. So huge amount of opportunity, I think. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And how about all this G20 stuff that's going on there? Where are we on that now? What does India intend to accomplish, with the G20 meetings? There's a lot of energy going behind it, obviously. Can you please give us a quick update on that?
So G20, we became the president of G20 in December of last year. And we're going to have the summit in Delhi in September, where we'll have the pleasure of hosting President Biden and along with other world leaders. Apart from G20 countries, there are some international organizations who have been invited, and some other countries who've been invited as guest participants, and Nigeria, etc. G20, our message is very clear. We want to do well for ourselves and showcase how we can do well for the world in terms of public good. Today, World TB Day, I would repeat what the Prime Minister said, that India produces 80% of the medicines, globally speaking, that is required for elimination of TB. So while India is serving itself, it is also serving the world at large. It is as committed to public good. And you would see the motto of India is one earth, one family, one future. That tells you our whole approach. In the run-up to G20, we had Voice of Global South Summit, where 125 developing countries participated, 125. Because all of them have been heavily impacted by what's happening around the world. And when your food is impacted, when your energy is impacted, obviously you're concerned. We want to take everybody's concerns on board as we lead the G20. We want to show to the world what India can provide in terms of development cooperation, in terms of meeting sustainable development goals, how we can make digital public goods accessible to the population at large, how we can showcase the way we have used technology to leapfrog, be it green energy pathway or energy transition. So that is our approach. All the things that are happening in the space of women empowerment, for example, will be there's a lot of interest across the world, in Africa, in developing countries, for people to understand how the JAM Trinity, for example, Aadhaar mobile telephony and the, mobile telephony, the Aadhaar, and the financial inclusion program has become a backbone for distribution of public goods, food grains, direct benefit, transfers of cash, so on and so forth. So all these and more, obviously, we are living in changing times. Everybody says that times have changed, but we must do things differently. But the movement on reform of multilateralism is going very slow. That is another very important area of work that India would like to highlight during its G20 presidency. And the other aspect of G20, perhaps for the first time, anything that you do, if you don't take it to people, the meaning of it is that much more less. So therefore, our idea, and this is the Prime Minister's idea, to take G20 to people. And therefore, you would see that over 250 meetings in 60 cities across the country are happening. I was talking to my friend from Mizoram. They were hosting a B20 meeting, business leaders from across the world in Mizoram. He said, where in life will Mizoram ever get a chance to host delegates from across the world? It's happening and people are so excited. So far and wide, everywhere you have G20 meetings being held, and it's a big opportunity for us to showcase ourselves to the world in terms of all the richness that we have. And so that is how we're looking at G20.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, you got 5 minutes, so let's just ask a couple of questions. You've helped tremendously today, so why don't you take the first one?
So this question, is going to be a little provocative, but I genuinely want to hear. So if you look at, on the one hand, I think it's very clear that the West and India, and especially the United States, I think there are lots of natural conditions that position us for allying, very closely. But at the same time, if you look at a lot of the narratives that are actually, that come about India in the Western press, and a large section of the educated Indians, in India actually feel now strongly about this. Take any index, it seems to, what one sees in social media is basically memes on that. One of the discussants today just showed something on the world happiness or the happiness index. If you take a democracy index, this is what many of us think. We've had 2 rounds of elections in states with basically power changing. Not a single booth there actually requiring repolling. If that is not testimony to democracy, what is? And what are these indices talking about? So the question that I want to ask you is, what is the consulate and what are overall our foreign missions doing on conveying some of the the outstanding work that is happening in India? And yet the narrative that one reads about in the media and oftentimes with a large section of the Indian diaspora as well seems to be completely at odds with what is happening in India.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you say. As far as media is concerned, one thing we're very clear. I mean, you have the freedom to write what you want, but we'll continue with a positive story. We want to do more. We want to convey all the good things that are happening. And over time, I think, I don't know whether you saw some of the articles recently written by, which came in some of the newspapers that were that not too India friendly. There's a clear line now that I see is that, earlier it was only problem. Now they say, yes, there are certain goods which are also happening. So in a sense, there's almost acceptance of all the good things that are happening on ground, yet there is a problem. I think with little time, I guess the narrative will change. All the good things that are happening in India, you will see one fine day that narrative. And also, when you talk about farm reforms, for example, farm reforms, the press here, at least, I saw they had a balanced view on farm reforms in India. What happens is that, there are one or two newspapers which catches all the attention, whereas there are other wider audience here, etc., who are more open to look at issues in India in a more favorable light. My sense is that change will happen. It's only a question of time as you move up the value chain, the ladder. Also remember, when you are moving up the value chain, you are swimming upstream. So there will be pushback. The question is that you have to continue doing what you want to do. I would say that our approach has been to keep doing our positive things, and that is how the negatives will be taken care of.
That's an issue that we have raised and talked about many times, by the way. And it was kind of heartening to see two favorable articles on India, or Indian Americans, I would say, in New York Times. I think it must be 2 weeks ago or something. One was about the Indian American Impact Organization, which was focused on Indian Americans, in the U.S. And the other thing was a digital revolution taking place in India. So, hopefully there'll be more and more of that. Something definitely that we should keep working towards.
These are changing times, so people don't want to yield. They don't want to change, give up their space. You must remember that. All of you here are very smart people, economists. So there's a bit of geopolitics in everything, in whatever you do in life. But times are changing. I'm sure, there'll be new things that you'll see happening soon.
I think one more question, if we can. Please go ahead, Mahesh. We have one over there too. So.
38 years in New York, फिर भी दिल है हिंदुस्तानी. Okay. I want to help the motherland. I'm into private equity.
I'm sorry, can I just request you, what's the question? Because we
only 1 minute, sir.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the plastic waste converted into energy. That's one of the projects which we would like to introduce to India. The second one is the water desalination. These are the two subjects which India definitely need help, and we are ready to help if at all any initiatives can be taken. Thank you.
Thank you.
The UN Water Week is happening right now. We have a high-level delegation from India. We have a Jal Shakti minister who's also here, who's very proudly, he said that over 75 million households have been connected to clean water tap connections in villages. And he's dead sure that by 2025, that's a target date, 200 million households in India, or all, 100%, there'll be 100% coverage of households so that everybody has clean and safe drinking water. So, but your questions are valid. We can talk about it as to what we can do together.
I think one last question. I would bet you it's about education, but please go ahead. Yeah.
Actually, it's not, but...
It is not, okay.
Thank you, Consul General Jaiswal. You painted a pretty upbeat picture of India, and indeed there is so much to celebrate. Obviously, there are still problems, and those will continue to be the case. But generally, the picture is indeed one of dynamism and, a forward thrust. And that's very palpable. I live in India for quite a lot of my time, and it's in the air, the reform all round. However, the quality of life is very seriously affected by certain parameters. In particular, you mentioned water, the depletion of groundwater, the falling of the water table, the salination of water has already been mentioned, and then pollution, PM 2.5 levels at an alarmingly high rate. So these are really, really important areas. You mentioned climate change action. I wonder to what extent really there is, serious action on that, because I think that climate financing has been an issue on which, a lot of the time our dialogue gets stuck, at COP26 and so on and so forth. So on the ground, really, how much change is there? For example, Prime Minister Modi mentioned at Paris that, one-time use plastics, he will do away with that. When he came back, industry representatives said, well, look, this is going to cause a lot of hardship, give us time to adapt. And he gave them, I think, 3 to 5 years. But even now, that's not been done. It's been 2 years beyond that limit as well. So it is difficult, but, what's your sense of how seriously the action is actually happening on climate change?
Well, I gave you the figures. Climate change, when it comes to climate change, we see the highest commitment in our leadership, among our policymakers, and I told you the kind of things that are happening on ground as well. You talked of pollution, etc. In all countries of the world, look at the history. Go and read the novels of Charles Dickens. You'll get an understanding that these things don't happen over time. You take time in cleaning up your rivers, you take time in cleaning up your air, etc. if you do that, because growth at times, it has its own complications. Let me give you an example, very interesting task that I was given a few months back. There was a certain chief minister of a state in India who was to visit New York. A day before his arrival, his team said that he wants to plant a tree in Manhattan. So I said, that's a very difficult task. Manhattan, you have to take permission. You have to go to the city department. He said, no, he wants to plant one. I said, we can take him across the river in New Jersey and somebody's home or backyard, we can plant a tree. He was not satisfied. He said, next day he's going to New Jersey, so he'll plant one tree there. So, but he wants to do one in New York as well. So I tried to speak to his officers and to get a sense as to why he's insisting on Manhattan. And then I was told that he plants a tree daily in his life. Now, when you look at this leader, maybe that he is wedded to the idea of nature and has a very high sense of commitment. But at the same time, it is reflective of the society that he lives in. So, I want to tell you that the kind of commitment, we have UN Water Week going on. We have a young group of civil society activists from India with whom I've interacted yesterday. They were telling me about the pond and the big lake in Hyderabad which they had cleaned up. The water table has gone up. Farmers are happy. People are happy in that area. So a lot of things, a lot of action is happening at the people's level. India doesn't grow just because government is working hard. India also grows because everybody is participating. It's a true people's movement in many respects. On World TV Day, let me tell you, 1 million Indians and Pravasi Indians, people staying abroad, committed people like him, have signed up as volunteers to support TB patients in India. So, the kind of energy that you see, the kind of commitment, I'm very certain that the next 25 years is going to be India's Amrit Kaal.
Thank you, Randhirji. Much appreciated. You just take a second, since I won't be here tomorrow. Again, thank you, Dr. Panagaria, for putting the conference together. Thanks to all of you for coming. And a special thanks to Kumar, where is Mona? Mona, and everybody else who's worked very hard to put this conference together. So we'll see you soon. All the best. There are drinks outside, and enjoy.